Hey, what's up, everybody? It's just Charles Sebastian, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show. We cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment. And we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got an excellent show for you guys. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. So I'm going to be reacting a little bit more to a story that we kind of broke. I don't want to be arrogant and say we broke it because maybe somebody else discussed it. But we did a show. I believe we published this show on Saturday. And the title of the show was called Michael Wilbon Goes Ballistic on LeBron James for Attacking and Humiliating Brian Windhorst on ESPN. The video did very well. And a lot of people kind of chimed in. Now, in that video, I was reading from an Outkick article that featured a sit-down that took place between Michael Wilbon and Outkick. I believe that was his first visit to Outkick. Outkick that's owned by Clay Travis, and I'm sure some of you know him. He actually, I believe Clay Travis used to work at ESPN, if I'm not mistaken. But although he didn't speak to Clay Travis, and they had this robust conversation where they were touching on a bunch of things. They were touching on players saying that they get criticized more today than they did in the past. He addressed the situation that took place on Pat McAfee with LeBron James. He then addressed Stephen A. Smith. He addressed just the toxic nature of media right now, essentially calling out his own network, right? But towards the tail end of this read, it's a very long read, but very, very interesting. There was a part where he began to talk about Bronny James and the coverage of ESPN, of Bronny James, and how he believes that ESPN is essentially using sensationalism of Bronny and promoting him simply to get clicks and views. And he believes that that's something that is watering down the product that is ESPN and the entire industry of sports media. So these are the comments that we want to get into right now. There was a story somewhere about ESPN and FS1 covered Bronny more this season than SGA, the front runner for MVP, Wilbon. That's right. I didn't even think about it, about that. It's true. They talk about him more than SGA. That's pandering. It's all pandering. Let me be clear. Our business is a piece of S. A lot of the days. There's nobody enforcing standards or having tough conversations. This is what happens when you no longer have functioning newsrooms because everyone is working from hotel rooms, from their bedrooms, and maybe even from their beds. People are not in newsrooms anymore or in a studio where you can tell them and call them out on their BS. That's a problem. Instead, there's a bunch of 20-year-olds pitching stories and spending all day on social media and reinforcing each other's BS. It's 100% pandering. And I hate it. You know this, Bobby? You see it. But again, I was not critical of LeBron as a dad at all. I feel differently about this than most. I get it. However, Tony and I didn't need to talk about it publicly. Tony understands it. His son, Michael, works for him. But we aren't talking about Bronny every day. Hell no. This isn't about Stephen A. It's an entire industry. That's what I want to remind LeBron. Our business is just SHI, you know what, some days. It just is. So you heard what Wilbon had to say. What are my thoughts on this? Yes, they're talking about Bronny James for clicks and views, but we need to be honest about this for a second. There are a lot of people talking about this in bad faith. A lot of bad faith actors out here. A lot of bad faith. And what I mean by bad faith is these guys are pretend like they know what's true, but they pretend to not understand what's going on. So they put out false or they put out disingenuous comments about the situation. For example, they'll ask you, look, why do you talk about Bronny so much? Why do you talk about a 55th pick so much? Right? Why do you talk about a 55th pick? But then do you know what happens? The same people asking you this, if Bronny does something well, they'll be the same ones to talk about him. They'll praise him on their shows and all of this stuff. And then the question then becomes, you're asking me, why am I talking about Bronny? But here we have an instance of you talking about Bronny. Why are you talking about a 55th pick? Why are you praising a 55th pick? Why are you handing out lollipops for a 55th pick? And then there's no answer. And they'll say, because this is what they'll say, you're only talking about Bronny for clicks and views. Okay, so what are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? Or let me guess. Let me get this straight. You decided to go into your studio today, call up everybody, set up your entire camera, set up everything. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend 20 minutes or whatever on a segment that's not going to generate any views or any income because we're stupid. Who does that? Everybody is in the business to make money, positive or negative. Where you lose me is where you try to act like that's not what you're doing too. That's where you lose me, because the same people asking you, why are you talking about a 55th pick, are usually asking that question because you said something that probably isn't positive. But if you said something that's positive, there's no need to ask the question, because in their minds, what you're doing is, oh, you're highlighting a young kid. So what they're saying essentially is just positive comments. If you say anything negative, you're going to be branded as a hater, number one. Number two, we're then going to turn around and ask you this question, which is, why are you talking about a 55th pick? Because what they're essentially saying, it's implied, and I'm perspicacious to all of these games, is you're only talking about Bronny James for clicks and views. Now we get to the Wilbon comments, because Wilbon is saying everybody's talking about him for clicks and views. But those that are speaking positively of him are saying, no, that's not what we're doing it for. We're doing it because we just want to promote positivity. It's like, nah, bro, you're doing it to make money. You're doing it to make money, or you're promoting positivity while making money. But you're pretending like you're not, because I'm saying nice things about the person. So therefore, we're not really doing this to make money. We're just doing it because we love them. Really? Then why turn on the camera and do it? Just do it for free. What's the overhead for that day? To be wasting topics, doing topics that make no money. Who does that? Nobody. So we have that aspect of it. In terms of the clicks and views part about it, look, Bronny is primarily getting attention because who his father is, right? So when people ask you, when are they talking about a 55th pick? The question then becomes, when was the last 55th picks or the last 55th picks or whatever, their father's been the face of the NBA? When would that happen? Never, right? Never. If the 55th pick was Chris Paul's son, do you think they'll be talking about him as much? No, of course not. The reason they're talking about Bronny is because he's LeBron's son. And LeBron is the face of the NBA. LeBron is famous, and therefore by proxy, Bronny is famous. But they know this already. They are fully aware of it. As a matter of fact, because Bronny is LeBron's son, it's one of the reasons they support him as much as they do, because they're LeBron supporters. So they're fully aware of this. Essentially, what they're saying is, and they're trying to ask you is, you're only talking about Bronny to make money. That's where all of this is going. And the question I have to ask you is, what do you talk about that is not meant to make money? And the answer is nothing. Nothing. They're all doing it to make money. Don't let nobody fool you. Ain't nobody up here doing sports content for free. Nobody's doing it. Everybody has bills. But they're trying to act like as if that's not what they do on a daily basis. Why do you talk about anything that you talk about? Aren't you talking about it to make money? Of course they are. But they want to act sanctimonious because they know if they say that, the people are going to see they're using them to make money, when in reality, that's what they're all doing. Now, to the point that Michael Wilbon is highlighting, ESPN doing it for clicks and views. Of course they're doing it for clicks and views. It's sensationalism. Of course they are. Of course they are. They're doing it for clicks and views. Of course they are. But the difference between ESPN and a lot of independent guys, ESPN will essentially have people up there twerking it up all day long. It's the independent guys that are going to give you a balanced opinion. And the minute one of those situations occurs where an ESPN analyst gives an honest take or a take that may be a little bit critical, you get a situation like LeBron running up on Stephen A. Smith. I rest my case.